Dinosaur, written by Stephen Llewelyn and performed by Chris Barrie. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell to keep up to date with the latest installments.
Chapter 11. Gods and Monsters. Day 2 on planet Earth. Circa 99,200,000 BC. 0800 hours. Ship time turned out to be about 11 hours behind local time. It was also about 3 months in front. Before locking down his post to join the party, Singh had set the ship's computer the task of recalculating their clock and calendar to synchronize with ancient Earth, also deciding to save their own time and date for posterity. He had left it counting, feeling it was at least a notional link with home. The computer reached its conclusion quickly, updating all systems with the new timestamp. All would now be ready for when the crew resumed their duties. The new world left Cape Canaveral on the 30th of July 2112, but in late Albion Cretaceous Gondwana, it was spring and precisely 0800 hours on the 20th of April, 99,198,017 BC. Captain James Douglas was alone on his bridge. He was fairly confident that it was a Monday morning. It sure as hell felt like one as he tried to force his scattered mind to focus through a dizzying hangover. At this moment, Baines entered, looking fragile. Douglas suddenly perked up a little. He whistled softly and began to speak, quietly of course, so that his head didn't split open. He couldn't help noticing the sunglasses. "Shades indoors? That bad, eh?" Baines leaned on the back of a seat, holding her free hand up in a warding motion. "I'll be just fine," she answered delicately, "if you'll just stop shouting." Ignoring the captain's mocking grin, she vaguely became aware of something missing from the usual bridge furniture. "Where's Sandy?" she asked. "No idea," replied Douglas, still speaking in low tones, despite Baines' protestations to the contrary. "The last I saw of our intrepid pilot was in the mud hole." He chewed the name over with some distaste. "He was balancing a bar stool on his head while singing Bollywood's greatest hits." Baines started to laugh but stopped, holding her head gingerly. "Oh, God," she groaned. "When they named that boy Singh, the gods were in good humor, it seems," Douglas continued. "Bad, was it?" "Well, considering the lad comes from a nation famous for using notes, half-tones, and even quarter notes, you'd have thought he'd be able to hit at least one of them, would you know?" Baines took a sharp intake of breath, tutting. "You're a cruel man, James Douglas." They chuckled, eliciting further moans from each of them as they sat holding their heads. "What were you drinking last night?" Baines asked. "How the hell should I know?" said Douglas, his terse reply muffled through his hands. Looking up gently, he asked, "What were you drinking?" Baines looked pale. "Same as you," she answered weakly. "I said I didn't know." "What's your point?" Replied Douglas, his woolly mind catching up. "This just won't do. I need to see Dave Flanagan and get a horse pill. I feel like Now, Captain." Utting my eyes. "What?" "Oh, nothing," said Baines. "I thought you were about to say shutting my eyes." "Something else. Never mind," she finished weakly. "If you're seeing the doc, get something for me too, would you? I'll keep watch on the back of my shades until you get back." "You do realize we still have a murderer out there, and we have to keep the bridge locked down?" asked Douglas. "Whoever it is won't be able to do anything for this headache, James. Besides, I'm all over it," she said, pressing a few buttons. She leaned back in her seat, saluting with her eyes closed. "Jill?" "Captain?" "You've locked down the bridge?" "As ordered, sir." "But I haven't left it yet." Baines coughed weakly, clearing her throat. I knew that," she said, undoing the lockdown. "Don't worry, Captain. We're parked. The handbrake's on. I'm ready for anything." Douglas snorted, instantly regretting it as pain beat drum and cymbal against the inside of his skull. He left the bridge to journey through a ghost ship, and soon found himself hoping that someone had crawled in to do a shift in sick bay. To his exquisite relief, Dr. Flanagan was indeed on duty and able to offer help. Douglas organised a senior staff meeting for 1100 hours, keeping it respectfully late in the hope that everyone would be able to sort themselves out gracefully by then. Gradually, both ship and pod crews were coming back to life after nearly 24 hours, excess all areas. By the appointed hour, the senior staff strode, or in some cases crept, into the bridge meeting room, a little less like the Walking Dead. Dr. Satnam Patel had put the most work into devising a strategy for moving forward, so the three councillors agreed that he should chair the meeting. "Welcome, everyone," he greeted, treating the fragile collective to a wan smile. "So this is it, and we certainly have a lot to do. We'll go through the initial issues we know of in turn, starting with a report about the prisoners. Would you care to start us off, Captain?" Nodding to the chair, Douglas began his report. "Firstly, Lieutenant Lloyd will be kept in his healing coma for another 18 hours or so. Once awakened, with Dr. Flanagan's approval, he'll be returned to the brig, and there he'll stay until we can work out exactly who's responsible for the situation we're in. Naturally, this also includes finding out who caused the deaths of our friends and comrades." He sipped a little water, grimacing slightly as his headache took another stab at him. "During the calamity," he continued, "when the computers were down and we were about to crash into the planet, or at least the atmosphere, someone tried to murder Lieutenant Lloyd." This was news to most of the gathering, and a shocked silence fell as each looked from one to another. What Douglas was about to say grated on him a little, but he decided it would be churlish not to continue. "Luckily, Dr. Flanagan arrived just in time to save him. Whoever did this must have medical knowledge. They seem to know their way around sickbay, too. The adrenaline used in the attempt was stolen from Flanagan's own stockroom." "That disgusts me," Baines stated flatly. Douglas looked at her in surprise. "Commander?" "I'm sorry, Captain," she replied. "It just doesn't sit right with me that while so many good people have lost their lives, that creature seems to have so many." "Well, it seems wherever we are in time, some things remain the same," the captain agreed sourly. On a brighter note, the other prisoner, Hank Bernstein Jr., or as he now wishes to be known, Henry, which I suppose makes things easier, has been released following a short but thorough investigation by Rick Drummond. Rick, as you know, is our ex-detective, who joined Major White's team as a security consultant. He could find no evidence to contradict the boy's story. It seems he really did simply find the bag, whilst dodging security on a clandestine mission to see his new girlfriend. Douglas's exasperated smile was mirrored by others at the table. They had all been teenagers once, excluding Tim Norris, who still was. "The bag is being examined in more detail as we speak by Dr. Wright," Douglas continued. "We still have a known murderer and saboteur loose aboard the ship. We assume this person to be the owner of said bag. Although we're unsure of the extent of Lloyd's involvement, he clearly wasn't responsible for all that's happened, so finding this person has to remain a top priority. That's all for now. We'll make more information available as we have it." "Thank you, Captain," Patel resumed. "Now we'll hear from Chief Nasaki regarding the health of the ship and the project to convert the lifeboats to reconnaissance craft. Hero, please." He invited the engineer to speak on the next point. Hero sat forward, the black eye inflicted by Giorgio Bacchini blooming like a floral pattern a few days on. "We ran a full shipwide diagnostic this morning," he began, "and apart from the destruction caused by the explosion and the resetting of the ship's main computer, we are otherwise fully operational. There will also certainly be some outer hull damage due to the initial speed of our entry into the atmosphere, and, as I said, we still need to close the rip in the hull caused by the bomb. To that end, later today the captain and I will lead a team outside to look over properly and plan a program of repairs. Naturally, we need the ship to be in full working order in case we have to relocate in a hurry. I'll be able to put together a more thorough report after this. Hero paused for a moment. I was going to say inspection, but I suppose mission is more appropriate? The concept settled within the minds of the men and women present. Nothing would be straightforward from here onwards. The handful of humans would have to adapt to the basic premise that this Earth was not their Earth. Not yet. Moving onto the lifeboats, Hero continued. The little ships should be perfectly usable as small orbital and atmospheric craft. The only conversion work will be to alter the docking mechanisms so that they can recapture the pods upon their return. As the escape pods were originally designed for emergency use, the idea of uncoupling and redocking with the ship has never really been explored. In a crisis, the obvious purpose of each lifeboat is to carry a maximum of 10 people, either to the safety of atmosphere or at least away from a stricken vessel, keeping them alive until they can be retrieved by another capital ship. Once the evacuees are aboard, the docking bolts holding the escape pods in tight to the New World's hull are... Hero tailed off, staring wide-eyed at Douglas. Detonated, the two men called out together. Their minds raced through possibilities as they continued staring dumbstruck at one another until Mother Sarah remarked,
Clearly that statement has struck a chord with you, gentlemen. Couldn't play it a little harder, could you?
Douglas locked gazes with her, the shock of his epiphany still evident. Hero may have just hit on something. We've been worrying really, all the last week how someone smuggled explosives on board to destroy the wormhole drive. There was very little trace evidence left at the bomb site, and the small amount of plastic explosive attached to the pod's reactor was unmarked and could have come from anywhere. Obviously, the only store of explosives on the ship belongs to Captain Gleason, as part of the mining effort for Mars. Naturally, his entire inventory was checked rigorously to make sure that nothing was missing. Douglas clapped a palm to his brow. We never considered the lifeboat release detonators and charges. Ah, my head. I should check them straight away, sir, said the chief. No, wait, Hero, said Douglas, holding up a hand whilst rubbing his forehead with the other. This meeting is important too. Calm Giorgio and get him to look into it. And make sure he takes a couple of security with him. Yes, sir. Hero turned aside from the table, opening a private channel to his subordinate. For now, Douglas continued, we should proceed with our meeting while this is verified. Very well, agreed Patel. Next on the agenda are the funerary rites of the people we have lost. As already agreed, we must cremate the remains so as to avoid the possibility, however unlikely, of polluting the fossil record with our presence. We must observe this strictly in order to preserve the timeline.
As it happens, interjected Sarah, I know that the three men, Mario, Andreas, and Bud, were all Catholic, so I'll give them the full rights to comply with their faith. I've also spoken to Dr. Parrott, who told me that the lady, Jamie, was Christian in the wider sense, although of no specific denomination. He asked me to perform a simple Christian ceremony on the same day. I hate to say it, but with the danger and all, I've been preparing a few variations on burial rites to take note of the various religions on board. Obviously, I'm an ordained priest, but I want to respect the beliefs of everyone on the ship. I hope they will understand.
Mother Sarah, said Douglas kindly, I'm sure everyone will agree there's no one more qualified to take care of us in that regard. Murmurs of assent followed his words, along with a few solemn nods of approval. This does present an entirely practical problem, however, stated Patel. At the moment we have nowhere to cremate anyone, which brings me on to our next point. Dr. Portree, would you outline your stage development plans for creating a compound, please? Samantha Portree sat forward in her chair, the better to take in all the faces around her.
Now we've seen the lie of the land, we've begun drawing up plans for the ditch and earthwork arrangement we discussed previously, beginning with a crescent butted against the ship. When enclosed, this will give us multiple points of egress, both pedestrian and vehicular. It will also allow people to get some air. Our small compound will be topped with a log palisade cut to spikes to discourage climbers. If anyone ever built themselves a model fort when they were a kid, well, that's pretty much what we're talking about. The enclosure will have to be gated for our security, or should I say, physical safety. I doubt the dinosaurs will try and burglarize us. Tim interjected, raising a hand to speak.
Please, Mr. Norris,
Patel invited.
I don't mean to contradict anyone,
the young man offered, hesitantly.
But they may actually do just that. Certainly, anything remotely edible will be fair game, including us. More than that, the animals may take a great interest in our equipment and gizmos. It's impossible to say for sure, but we know that several bird species from our own time like to steal shiny things. And as the dinosaur is the direct ancestor of the bird...
He opened his hands, letting the words hang for a moment before adding,
In fact, we may even come across early true birds in this time.
That's a good point, Tim, Portree acknowledged. I suppose that illustrates just how careful we'll need to be. We can no longer assume anything. Once we have the small enclosure built, we'll be able to begin construction of the much larger one we'll need to begin farming. An area of about 30 acres around the ship should do it. We'll also be able to use it for storage and exercise, perhaps even corral a few beasts once we know what we're doing. We have about 150 tons of cement in our stores and many tons of structural steel, rebar, and so on. Assuming we can find a source of sand, we can make concrete and begin building safe huts around the compound where our people will be able to take refuge from predators. This is likely to be necessary during the work and after, looking at some of the flying critters out there. We'll also need to fabricate storage facilities for grain and other crops. Simple grain stores have historically been supported off the ground to stop small animals from stealing or spoiling our supplies. It will be the same here and now. We have huge seed stocks which were meant for the Mars hydroponics pod. Happily, they can go back into the ground and, in a little while, feed us.
Jim Miller raised a hand to comment.
Could this introduction of plant species, which probably don't exist yet, muddy the timeline again? Sorry, he apologized. Not trying to be obstructive, but the way plants cross-pollinate, surely messing with evolution has to be a consideration.
You're right, Doctor, said Douglas. But we probably won't be able to eat much of the vegetation out there, so once again, it's do or die. I don't really think we have much choice on this one.
What about the concrete and steel structures proposed? Asked Sarah. Won't they leave traces on the landscape after we're gone?
Not likely, Portree answered, looking directly at the priest. There's virtually nothing we can make that wouldn't return to its base compounds and elements within just a few thousands of years. We're so far back that particular problem shouldn't affect us. Admittedly, it's a zillion to one chance, but our bones and those of any animals that have traveled with us are the only things which may survive. That's because permineralization occurs during the fossilization process. Basically, water drains through the remains, replacing the living matter with crystallized, waterborne minerals eventually. This leaves only the shell of the bone wrapped around a core of mineralized marrow, which hardens along with the sedimentary rock encasing it. Sorry to get technical, but knowing you guys, I thought I'd better revisit my college notes for a refresher. Back when I was a geology major, I would never have guessed that I might be in danger of leaving my own bones in the ground for me to dig myself up again in a core sample. She smiled ironically at her fellow scientists. Heroes calm-binged, interrupting them. Nasaki, he acknowledged.
Hiro, the voice replied through the small speaker. It's Giorgio.
Hang on, said Hiro, toggling his communicator into the room's speaker system. Carry on, Giorgio. We can all hear you now.
Okay, said Bacini, his voice emanating from every corner. I've inspected the escape pods, and the 4 at the bow of the ship are all missing explosive charges from their launch mechanisms.
What about the 6 aft? Asked Hiro.
The aft lifeboats are intact. It may be worth noting that it was near one of these that Lieutenant Lloyd was found. The first time he bumped his head, that is. So, if he had escape on his mind, he was in the right place. That means there are 4 charges to factor for. One would have...
His voice trembled slightly, trailing off. Through the comm, the listeners could hear him take a deep breath, swallowing before continuing, clearly reliving the death of his twin.
One would have been enough to destroy the wormhole drive and...
It's okay, Georgie, said Douglas kindly. Take your time.
Thank you, Captain. Well, one would have been enough. We recovered 1 de-stickered pack from the attempt to blow the main pod reactor, which leaves 2 unaccounted for.
Bacini's statement cut a bow wave through their thoughts. Baines leaned back, exhaling loudly into the fearful silence which crashed in after. I thought we'd woken up from this nightmare, she muttered at last. Mother Sarah leaned forward, taking in the professionals seated about her.
Let's just try and remember this, folks. Evil wins battles, not wars. The sneak attacks which have dogged our journey since we left Canaveral will become less easy for whoever's responsible now we're onto 'em. I say good luck to anyone trying to outsmart the people in this room. You're as ingenious as you are courageous. It's an honor to know you, and I'm proud to call you friends. Together, we'll turn this around. I have complete faith in that. And when we do, they'll be sorry they ever started this whole affair.
Burton and White's comms binged almost simultaneously, making several people jump. Excusing themselves, each man turned from the table to answer. After a couple of short, hushed conversations, Burton spoke first.
I hate to put a downer on such fine words, but we appear to have another problem, people. The power grid has gone down on the pod. Everything.
I just got the same message from one of my men, White confirmed.
Any idea of the cause?
Asked Patel.
Not yet,
replied Burton.
I'd better get down there. Could you excuse me, please?
Of course, said Patel. I'd better go with him, White added, in case this is more than a tech failure. Douglas nodded. Keep us posted, please. At least a power failure isn't dangerous now we're back on terra firma.
Actually, Captain, this might be a slow burn catastrophe in the making.
How so?
Asked Sarah. The New Zealander shook his head.
With no power, we have no air recycling. The pod is big, but with 100 pairs of lungs pumping CO2 into the atmosphere, well, we have to get it fixed ASAP, he finished.
Of course, Douglas acknowledged. But it would take a couple of days before we were in trouble, surely.
True,
replied Burton.
So here's hoping we've only got 2 days' worth of damage to repair.
Douglas conceded. Can we open the 2 hatches between the ship and the pod? Asked Baines.
Yes,
agreed Burton.
Worthwhile, but of limited effectiveness, because without power, we still can't control airflow.
Excuse my ignorance,
said Sarah, leaning forward and putting a hand up.
But couldn't we just bring everyone onto the New World?
Baines shook her head. We couldn't sustain the population for long, she said. The New World, despite her size, was designed for a crew of just 13, and her air recycling plant is based around that sort of figure. Of course, there's plenty of redundancy in case we need extra maintenance staff or play host to a visitor or 2, but the pod has 100 people on board. Pretty soon the air would become unbreathable on both units.
I guess we just couldn't open a window then, huh?
Sarah tried again, hopefully. You'd think it would be that simple, Douglas replied. But needless to say, spaceships don't usually come with opening windows. Dr. Burton is right, though. Even if we open every hatch and door, the air quality in the core of the pod would degrade as people use it. That's the trouble with living in an airtight box made up of airtight boxes. There's just no flow without the machinery to make it happen.
More to the point, said Tim. If you open the doors, what might stroll in?
Burton worked two-handed, with a small torch in his mouth. He peered into a hatch containing a scramble of cables which used to make sense to him. A noise from behind made him start. He turned around quickly, slumping with relief, as Captain Gleason wheeled a large portable CO2 scrubber into the room with one of Burton's own engineering staff. The engineer placed it in the corner, out of the way, activating the unit.
What do you have, Berto?
asked the Australian in his usual familiar way.
It's a mess, mate, replied the New Zealander. Somebody has rewired the shunt. This is the unit that controls the power flow. Obviously, we have a lot of redundant power conduits in case a system goes down, but it's all controlled from here. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but it looks like it's been top and tailed.
Top and tailed?
asked Gleeson.
Yeah, sorry, I mean, if I was going to sabotage this crate, I'd scramble the power so that the high power circuits fed into the low power ones, and then it's frying tonight. Bring a plate.
Surely this lot has breakers and RCCBs everywhere to stop it getting barbied,
asked the Australian, gesturing to the myriad control panels around him.
It does, and backups to the backups. But if you work your way through in reverse, you can bypass them all from this room. Then basically, the breakers are out of the loop and you can pop the lot.
I take it you've checked the breakers?
Yes, and surprise, surprise, it's bad news,
Burton concluded acerbically.
It's that easy to bugger all this up?
Gleeson asked incredulously.
Yeah, well, it could never happen, mate, could it? Because anyone deliberately destroying this system, far from being a run-of-the-mill saboteur, they'd have to have a death wish too.
He turned to face Gleeson.
Who knew?
He asked ironically. Gleeson looked into the hatch over Burton's shoulder, adding his own torchlight to the task.
You still use all that old-fashioned cable for this stuff?
He asked, surprised.
Yeah, spaceship,
replied Burton, as if that explained everything. He turned to face Gleeson once more.
If anything breaks down, and you can't breathe the air outside, you're in real trouble, mate. That's why most of what makes this place work is old tech, because we've had decades and decades to make it 100% reliable.
Gleeson peered once more into the hatch and its mess of wires.
100%?
he asked. The senior staff listened to Burton's voice booming from the speakers in the meeting room.
The engineer in charge was found in the storage lockup, face down with his head in a mop bucket,
he said.
Has the man been hurt?
asked Patel, concerned.
He's all right, but if we'd left him much longer, the rim of the bucket would have choked him. Doc Flanagan has taken him away to treat his throat and fix him up. He won't be saying much for a day or two.
Douglas felt a wave of relief. For a moment, he thought he'd lost someone else. I've got to find this animal soon, he chided himself. What can you do to get power back online, Doctor? he asked.
I've taken the core offline, and I'm heading down to the main plant room now. If all the safeguards in that part of the pod are okay, I'll be able to get partial systems running again from there before I start fixing the mess in the core and power distribution bays.
That's good news, Doctor. Please keep us appraised, replied Douglas.
Said Patel.
Satnam? asked Douglas.
I think there may be more downside yet. Am I right, Dr. Burton?
replied Patel.
Yeah, we can fix it, but it's going to take at least 2 days just to get a basic workaround, answered the New Zealander. The multiple fail-safes we have were meant to stop this from ever happening. But of course, whoever did this bypassed all that, and now it's all munted. Munted? asked Patel. Yep, it's cocked it. Packaroo,
Burton elaborated. Patel looked around the table for help.
He means it's totally cactus, mate.
Gleeson's voice joined the comlink helpfully.
Saw rooted. The mongrel who did it's as cunning as a dunny rat, too.
Patel simply sat back, raising his eyebrows in bafflement.
Fully,
continued Burton.
And after that, it'll take a week or more before she'll be right. If we ever catch this...
He sought a euphemism.
Rooter? Captain, I suggest you set him free.
Really? asked Douglas, genuinely surprised.
Yeah,
snapped Burton.
Set him free to go and play outside for a bit.
Ah, said Douglas, the beginnings of a smile tugging the corners of his mouth. I can't say the idea's no appealing, but I think that will have to be a discussion for another day.
I'll get back to you when I've had a proper look around the main plant room. Burton, out.
I think, said Baines, speaking quietly into the silence which followed, that we'll have to split those two up, if only to give the English language a chance to survive.
Dinosaur, written by Stephen Llewelyn and performed by Chris Barrie. New installments uploaded each week. Subscribe for more. Visit the link in the description for free New World companion stories, available for download as ebooks.